Marcus Johnson stepped out of the transport ship and breathed the clean air of New Geneva for the first time. The planet looked nothing like Earth, but it felt like home already. Purple grass covered the rolling hills and two small suns hung in the orange sky. After 15 years fighting in the Proxima Wars, Marcus was ready for peace. He walked through the spaceport carrying one bag. Everything else he owned had been destroyed when his military base was bombed 3 months ago. The Federation had given him a new identity chip, a veteran's pension, and enough credits to start over anywhere he wanted. Marcus chose New Geneva because it was far from the war zones and had good weather. The taxi driver was a blue-skinned Zentari who spoke perfect English. "Welcome to New Geneva, human friend. Where are you going today?" "Aurora Heights," Marcus said, reading from his datapad. "I bought a house there." The driver's face changed. "Aurora Heights is very expensive area, very strict rules. You sure you want to live there?" Marcus nodded. He had earned his money fighting for the Federation. He deserved a nice house in a safe neighborhood. The driver shrugged and started the engine. Aurora Heights sat on a hill overlooking the capital city. All the houses were white with red roofs, exactly the same design. Perfect lawns stretched between them like green carpets. Not a single piece of trash or dead plant could be seen anywhere. Signs at every corner reminded residents about the rules. No loud music after 8 p.m. No vehicles parked on the street overnight. No non-approved modifications to houses. Marcus's new home was at the end of a quiet street. It had 3 bedrooms, a garage, and a small backyard. The previous owner had left it in perfect condition. Everything was white and clean and empty. Marcus set down his bag and looked around. For the first time in years, he was truly alone and safe. The next morning, Marcus was unpacking when someone knocked on his door. A tall white woman with short blonde hair stood on his porch. She wore a blue suit and carried a tablet computer. "Good morning," she said with a fake smile. "I'm Linda Patterson, president of the Aurora Heights Homeowners Association. I wanted to welcome you to our community." Marcus shook her hand. "Thank you. I'm Marcus Johnson." Linda's smile got smaller. "Yes, I have your file here. You're a veteran, correct? From Earth originally?" "That's right, I served in the engineering corps during the Proxima Wars." "How interesting." Linda made notes on her tablet. "Well, Mr. Johnson, I hope you'll find our community rules very clear and easy to follow. We work hard to maintain certain standards here, I'm sure you understand." Marcus did not understand, but he nodded anyway. Linda handed him a thick book of rules and regulations. The cover said, "Aurora Heights Community Guidelines, Revised Edition 2387. "Please read this carefully," Linda said. "We have our monthly association meeting next Tuesday at 7 p.m. in the community center. Attendance is mandatory for all residents." After Linda left, Marcus flipped through the rule book. No gardens except approved earth plants. No visitors staying more than 3 nights without written permission. No business activities conducted from homes. No modifications to house exteriors without committee approval. The list went on for 200 pages. Marcus had lived in military barracks with fewer rules than this neighborhood. Over the next few weeks, Marcus tried to settle into his new life. He bought furniture and planted a small garden behind his house. He chose vegetables that grew well in New Geneva's soil, tomatoes from Earth, purple carrots from Vega Prime, and healing herbs that the Zentari used for medicine. The plants grew quickly in the rich alien soil. Every morning, Marcus saw Linda Patterson walking past his house. She always slowed down to look at his garden and make notes on her tablet. Sometimes she brought other neighbors with her. They would point at his plants and whisper to each other. Marcus ignored them. He was used to people staring at him. In the military, he had been one of only a few black officers. Some people always found reasons to complain about him no matter what he did. He had learned not to care. One evening, Marcus was working in his garden when his neighbor came over. The man was older with gray hair and kind eyes. "Hi there," the neighbor said. "I'm Bill Cooper. I live next door." Marcus stood up and shook Bill's hand. "Marcus Johnson, nice to meet you." "Those are some interesting plants you've got there," Bill said, looking at the purple carrots. I've never seen vegetables like that before. They're from Vega Prime, Marcus explained. The Zentari traders in town told me they grow well here. They taste good too. Bill smiled. That's pretty cool. I've only ever grown earth plants myself. Maybe you could teach me about the alien varieties sometime. I'd be happy to, Marcus said. He liked Bill already. Just a friendly warning, though, Bill said, lowering his voice. Linda Patterson doesn't like anything that's not from Earth. She's been complaining about your garden at the association meetings. Says it doesn't fit with the community standards. Marcus sighed. What's wrong with growing vegetables? Nothing wrong with it, Bill said. But Linda thinks Aurora Heights should look exactly like a neighborhood on Earth. She doesn't like reminders that we're living on an alien planet. That night, Marcus read through the rule book again. The gardening section said residents could only plant approved species native to Earth or Earth colonies. It did not specifically mention alien plants, but Linda could probably argue that his vegan carrots violated the rules. Marcus decided he did not care. He had fought for 3 different alien worlds during the war. He had friends from dozen different species. Earth was his birth planet, but the galaxy was his home now. If Linda Patterson wanted to pretend she still lived on Earth, that was her problem. The next morning, Marcus planted more alien vegetables. He also bought a small Zentari wind chime for his front porch. It made soft musical sounds when the breeze blew through it. Linda Patterson walked by an hour later. She stopped in front of his house for 5 full minutes, writing furiously on her tablet. Marcus watched her from his kitchen window and smiled. The war had taught him to pick his battles carefully. This was one battle he intended to win. Marcus had been living in Aurora Heights for 2 months when he started his real work. During the day, he maintained his garden and explored the city. But at night, he worked in his garage on something much more important than vegetables. The Federation had given Marcus a special research grant before he moved to New Geneva. They wanted him to continue developing terraforming technology he had started during the war. His inventions could turn dead planets into living worlds in just a few years instead of centuries. The Federation needed this technology badly because millions of refugees from the Outer Rim Wars needed new homes. Marcus had converted his garage into a laboratory. He installed powerful computers, molecular printers, and atmospheric processors. The equipment hummed quietly as it worked through complex calculations and created prototype devices. Marcus was careful to soundproof the garage so his neighbors would not be disturbed. His research focused on accelerated soil development and atmospheric conversion. Traditional terraforming took hundreds of years to make a planet livable. Marcus's process used engineered bacteria and controlled fusion reactions to compress that timeline into just 5 years. The key was finding the right balance of alien and Earth-based organisms to create stable ecosystems. 3 times a week, Dr. Kethvar visited Marcus's lab. The old Zentari scientist had worked on terraforming for 60 years and knew more about alien biology than anyone in the galaxy. Kethvar was small and blue with 4 arms and large black eyes. He spoke slowly and thought carefully about every problem. The soil bacteria from Rigel 7 show promising results, Kethvar said one evening, studying data on Marcus's computer. But we need better integration with Earth-based plants. The root systems are not compatible, Marcus nodded. What if we modify the bacteria to produce different nutrients? Something that both Earth and alien plants can use. Possible, Kethvar said, but dangerous if we make mistakes. Wrong bacteria could destroy entire ecosystems instead of creating them. They worked late into the night, running simulations and testing different combinations. Marcus enjoyed the research more than anything he had done since leaving the military. This work could help billions of people find new homes across the galaxy. Unfortunately, Linda Patterson had noticed Dr. Kethvar's visits. The next morning, Linda knocked on Marcus's door again. This time she brought 2 other neighbors with her. Helen Walsh was a thin woman with angry eyes who lived across the street. Gary Martinez was a large man who worked for the colonial government. Mr. Johnson, Linda said in her fake polite voice, we need to discuss some concerns about your activities. What activities? Marcus asked. The alien visiting your house 3 times a week, Helen said. We don't know what you're doing in there, but it doesn't look right. Marcus kept his face calm. Dr. Kethvar is a friend of mine. We work together sometimes. Work on what exactly? Gary asked. The association rules clearly state that no business activities can be conducted from residential properties. We're not conducting business, Marcus said. We're doing scientific research. Linda smiled coldly. Research with alien technology in a residential neighborhood. That sounds very dangerous to me. What if something explodes? What if you're creating biological weapons? Marcus almost laughed. These people had no idea what real weapons looked like. He had seen actual biological weapons during the war. They were nothing like his terraforming bacteria. I'm not making weapons, Marcus said. I'm trying to help people find new homes on empty planets. So you admit you're conducting unauthorized experiments? Linda said, making notes on her tablet. Experiments that could endanger this entire community. My research is authorized by the Federation Science Council, Marcus said. I have all the proper permits. Linda's smile disappeared. Federation permits don't override local community rules, Mr. Johnson. This is a residential neighborhood, not a research facility. You need to stop these activities immediately. Or what? Marcus asked. Or we'll file a formal complaint with the colonial authorities, Gary said. We'll demand a full investigation of whatever you're hiding in that garage. After they left, Marcus called Dr. Kethvar to warn him about the situation. The old scientist was not surprised. This happens often, to my people, Kethvar said sadly. Some humans fear what they do not understand. They think all alien technology is dangerous. Maybe we should move the lab somewhere else, Marcus suggested. No, Kethvar said firmly. Our work is too important to stop because of ignorant people. We continue. The harassment got worse over the following weeks. Linda filed noise complaints even though Marcus's equipment was silent. She reported suspicious chemical smells even though his lab produced no odors. She claimed that alien visitors posed a security risk to the community. Linda also organized surveillance of Marcus's house. Neighbors took turns watching his driveway and photographing everyone who visited. They installed security cameras pointed at his property and followed Dr. Kethvar when he walked to the shops after their research sessions. Marcus tried to ignore the harassment, but it was getting harder. He had fought in 3 wars to protect the Federation's values of diversity and cooperation. Now he was being persecuted for working with an alien scientist on research that could help millions of refugees. The breaking point came during the monthly association meeting. Marcus attended because the rules required it. Linda called his research dangerous experimentation and demanded that all residents vote to ban alien visitors from Aurora Heights. We moved here to live in a safe, traditional, human community, Linda told the crowd. We didn't come here to be test subjects for alien science projects. Helen Walsh stood up. I've seen chemicals being delivered to his house. Who knows what kind of toxic materials he's working with over there? The chemicals were harmless growth, nutrients for his bacteria cultures. But Marcus did not bother explaining. These people had already made up their minds about him. Mr. Johnson, Linda said, would you like to explain to your neighbors exactly what you're doing in your garage? Marcus stood up slowly. Every person in the room was staring at him. Most looked suspicious or afraid. Only Bill Cooper seemed friendly. I'm working on terraforming technology, Marcus said. Technology that could give homeless people new worlds to live on. Dr. Kethvar is helping me because he's one of the best scientists in the galaxy. Our work is completely safe and completely legal. Terraforming, Linda repeated mockingly. How convenient. You could claim to be doing anything in there and we'd have no way to verify it. You're welcome to visit the lab anytime, Marcus offered. Absolutely not, Linda said quickly. We're not going anywhere near whatever dangerous experiments you're conducting. The association voted 23-7 to ban alien visitors from Aurora Heights. Marcus was given 30 days to comply or face legal action. Walking home that night, Marcus felt angry and tired. He had spent 15 years fighting for the Federation's ideals. Now a bunch of scared neighbors wanted to stop him from helping refugee families find new homes. Dr. Kethvar was waiting for him at the house. I heard about the meeting, the old scientist said. Perhaps I should not visit anymore. No, Marcus said firmly. Our work is too important. We're not going to let fear and ignorance stop us from helping people. Kethvar's large black eyes showed concern. But if they make legal troubles for you, let them try, Marcus said. I have Federation, backing invalid permits. They can complain all they want, but they can't stop legitimate scientific research. What Marcus did not know was that Linda Patterson had already decided that legal complaints would not be enough. She had other plans for dealing with the alien-loving veteran who refused to follow community standards. Linda Patterson paced around her living room like a caged animal. 3 weeks had passed since the association voted to ban alien visitors from Aurora Heights. Marcus Johnson was supposed to comply within 30 days. Instead, the blue-skinned Zentari scientist continued visiting his house every other evening. Linda had filed complaints with the Colonial Police, the Health Department, and the Zoning Board. Every agency told her the same thing. Marcus had valid Federation permits for his research. Dr. Kethvar was a registered alien resident with full rights to visit human neighborhoods. There was nothing illegal about their activities. This is ridiculous, Linda told her nephew Rick Patterson over dinner. We can't have aliens wandering around our neighborhood whenever they want. What's the point of having community standards if the government won't enforce them? Rick was 28 years old with short brown hair and cold blue eyes. He had served in the Federation Marines until getting discharged for excessive violence during a peacekeeping mission. Now he worked odd jobs around New Geneva and lived in Linda's basement. Maybe the government needs some convincing, Rick said, cutting his steak with more force than necessary. Linda looked at him carefully. What do you mean? I mean, sometimes people need to see real consequences before they take problems seriously. Right now, everyone thinks this Johnson guy is harmless. But what if something bad happened? What if his experiments caused an accident? That hurt innocent people? Are you suggesting we sabotage his laboratory? Linda asked quietly. Rick shrugged. I'm suggesting that dangerous research facilities sometimes have accidents, especially when they're located in residential neighborhoods, where they don't belong. Linda had been thinking the same thing for days, but hearing Rick say it out loud made her nervous. That would be illegal. We could go to prison. Only if we get caught, Rick said. And only if someone can prove it wasn't a real accident. Do you know how to make it look like an accident? Rick smiled coldly. Aunt Linda, I was a demolitions expert in the Marines. I know exactly how to make buildings blow up for any reason you want. They spent the next hour discussing the plan. Rick would wait until Marcus and the alien scientist were both away from the house. Then he would plant small explosive devices in the garage laboratory. The devices would be designed to look like equipment malfunctions or chemical reactions gone wrong. We're not trying to kill anyone, Linda insisted. We just want to destroy his laboratory and make him leave the neighborhood. Of course, Rick agreed. I'll make sure the explosion happens when nobody's home. Just enough damage to shut down his operation and send a message. Linda felt a mixture of excitement and fear. Part of her knew this was wrong, but another part of her believed it was necessary to protect their community from dangerous alien influences. When would you do it? She asked. Next week, Rick said. I've been watching his schedule. Every Tuesday night, Johnson goes to the Colonial Council meeting downtown. He's usually gone for 3 hours. The alien doesn't visit on Tuesdays. Perfect opportunity. What about the neighbors? Someone might see you. I'll go in through the backyard after dark. Wear all black, move quietly. In and out in 15 minutes, the explosion won't happen until hours later when I'm safely home with you watching television. Linda nodded slowly. What kind of explosives will you use? Standard thermite charges, Rick explained. Burns hot enough to melt metal but doesn't make a big explosion that would damage other houses. I'll make it look like his fusion equipment overheated and caught fire. Won't the investigators be able to tell it was sabotage? Rick shook his head. Not if I do it right. Thermite burns up all the evidence of how it was started. They'll just see melted metal and assume his alien technology malfunctioned. Over the next few days, Linda watched Marcus's house more carefully than ever. She noted his schedule, counted his visitors, and observed his daily routines. Marcus seemed to suspect nothing. He continued his research as if the association's vote meant nothing. Dr. Kethvar still visited twice a week. The old alien scientist always brought a small bag of equipment and stayed for exactly 3 hours. Linda wondered what kind of dangerous experiments they were conducting in that garage. Maybe Rick was right. Maybe the community needed to be protected from whatever they were building in there. On Monday evening, Linda called an emergency association meeting. She told the residents about Marcus's continued violations of their ban on alien visitors. "He's completely ignoring our community standards," Linda said to the angry crowd. "The colonial authorities won't help us. We need to take stronger action." "What kind of action?" asked Helen Walsh. "I think we should organize protests outside his house," Linda said. "Make it clear that his behavior is not welcome here." It was a lie, of course. Linda had no intention of organizing protests, but she needed to create a public record of community opposition to Marcus's activities. Later, when his laboratory was destroyed, everyone would remember how concerned the neighbors had been about safety. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Residents complained about property values declining because of alien visitors. They worried about strange chemicals contaminating their water supply. They demanded action from anyone, to restore their community to proper standards. Marcus did not attend the meeting. Linda was glad. She did not want to look him in the face while planning to destroy his life's work. Tuesday arrived gray and rainy. Linda spent the day cleaning her house and trying to act normal. Rick went to his construction job as usual but came home early with a bag of supplies from the hardware store. "Everything's ready," he told Linda quietly. "The charges are small, enough to fit in my backpack. Timer devices will give me plenty of time to get away before anything happens." At 6 p.m., Marcus left his house wearing a suit and tie. Linda watched from her window as he drove away toward downtown. The Colonial Council meeting would last until at least 9:30. Rick waited until full darkness before leaving the house. He wore black clothes and carried a small backpack. Linda gave him a spare key to her car in case he needed to leave quickly. "Remember," Linda said, "just destroy the laboratory. Don't hurt anyone." "Don't worry," Rick said. "I'm a professional." Linda spent the next 2 hours pacing around her house and checking the time every few minutes. At 8:15, Rick returned looking calm and confident. "It's done," he said simply. "Devices are in place. They'll activate around midnight when everyone's asleep. Should look like equipment failure." They sat down to watch television and wait. Linda kept checking her phone for news alerts, but nothing appeared. At 11:45, she started watching the clock. Midnight came and went. Nothing happened. "Maybe the timers are slow," Rick said. At 12:15, Linda saw orange light flickering outside her window. She looked out and gasped. Marcus's house was completely engulfed in flames. Fire shot up from every window and the roof was beginning to collapse. "Oh my God," Linda whispered. "It's so much bigger than you said it would be." Rick was already on his feet, staring out the window with a shocked expression. "That's not right. The charges weren't big enough for that. Something went wrong." "Emergency." Sirens wailed in the distance. Fire trucks and ambulances raced toward Aurora Heights with lights flashing. Other neighbors were coming out of their houses to stare at the massive blaze. "We have to go outside," Linda said. "If we stay inside, people will think it's suspicious." They joined the crowd of neighbors watching helplessly as Marcus's house burned to the ground. The fire was so intense that firefighters could not get close enough to save anything. Within an hour, nothing remained but a pile of smoking rubble. "Was anyone inside?" someone asked. Linda felt a cold chill in her stomach. She had not thought to check if the alien scientist might be visiting tonight. Bill Cooper pushed through the crowd with tears in his eyes. "I saw Dr. Kethvar go into the house. Around 7 p.m., he said. I don't think he came back out." Marcus was driving home from the Colonial Council meeting when he saw the orange glow in the sky. At first he thought it might be a sunset reflection off the clouds. Then he smelled smoke in the air and realized something was burning in Aurora Heights. He pressed harder on the accelerator and took the turns toward his neighborhood faster than he should have. As he got closer, the glow got brighter and the smoke got thicker. Other cars were heading in the same direction. Emergency vehicles raced past him with sirens screaming. Marcus turned onto his street and felt his world collapse. His house was gone. In its place stood a wall of orange flames reaching up into the night sky. Fire trucks surrounded the burning wreckage, but the blaze was too intense for them to approach. Water from their hoses turned to steam before it could reach the flames. He parked behind a police barrier and ran toward the fire. A colonial officer grabbed his arm before he could get too close. "Stay back, sir. It's not safe." "That's my house," Marcus said, staring at the inferno. "I live there." The officer's expression softened. "I'm sorry. There's nothing we can do right now. The fire is too hot. We'll have to wait for it to burn itself out." Marcus pulled out his phone and tried to call Dr. Kethvar. The old scientist always went home after their research sessions, but maybe he had stayed late tonight to finish an experiment. The call went straight to voicemail. "Dr. Kethvar, this is Marcus. My house is on fire. Please call me back and let me know you're safe." Marcus tried calling 3 more times but got no answer. A sick feeling grew in his stomach. Kethvar never ignored phone calls. He was always polite about answering immediately. Bill Cooper appeared beside Marcus, looking worried and sad. "Marcus, I'm so sorry. This is terrible." "Have you seen Dr. Kethvar tonight?" Marcus asked. "Did he leave before the fire started?" Bill's face went pale. "I saw him arrive around 7 p.m. He was carrying his usual bag of equipment. But I didn't see him leave. I was watching television until the siren started." Marcus felt like someone had punched him in the chest. If Kethvar was inside when the fire started, he was almost certainly dead. The flames were too hot and too fast for anyone to escape. "What caused the fire?" Marcus asked the police officer. "Too early to tell," the officer replied. "The investigators won't be able to examine anything until the flames die down. That could take several more hours." Marcus spent the night standing behind the police barrier watching his life burn away. The house contained everything he owned except the clothes he was wearing. His research data, his equipment, his personal belongings, everything was turning to ash and smoke. But those were just things. The real tragedy was Dr. Kethvar. The old scientist had become Marcus's closest friend over the past few months. Kethvar was brilliant and kind and had spent 60 years working to help people from different species understand each other. Now he was gone because he had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Other neighbors gathered to watch the fire, but most of them stayed far away from Marcus. Only Bill Cooper remained beside him, offering quiet support. Linda Patterson stood, with a group near the street corner. She kept looking at Marcus with an expression he could not read. By dawn, the fire had finally burned out. The house was completely destroyed. Nothing remained but a foundation filled with charred wreckage and twisted metal. Steam rose from the ruins as morning dew hit the hot debris. Fire investigators moved in wearing protective suits and breathing equipment. They began carefully sifting through the wreckage, looking for clues about what had caused the blaze. Marcus waited nearby, hoping they would find proof that Dr. Kethvar had escaped somehow. At noon, the investigators found what they were looking for. A blackened section of the garage foundation contained the remains of a small blue-skinned humanoid body. The victim had died from smoke inhalation before the flames reached him. Marcus sat down on the curb and cried for the first time since he was a child. Dr. Kethvar had died because Marcus had invited him to work in this neighborhood. If they had conducted their research somewhere else, the old scientist would still be alive. Detective Carmen Lopez arrived to take Marcus's statement about the fire. She was a middle-aged woman with short black hair and intelligent brown eyes. Her questions were thorough but not accusatory. "Can you think of anyone who might have wanted to harm you or your property?" she asked. Marcus looked across the street at Linda Patterson's house. "The Homeowners Association wasn't happy about my research activities. They voted to ban alien visitors from the neighborhood, but I didn't think they would do something like this." "What kind of research were you conducting?" "Terraforming technology. I was developing ways to make dead planets livable for refugees from the war zones. Dr. Kethvar was helping me with the biological components." Detective Lopez made notes in her computer tablet. "Were you storing any dangerous chemicals or equipment in the house?" Some bacterial cultures and atmospheric processing equipment. Nothing that should have caused an explosion like this. My fusion reactor was completely contained and had multiple safety systems. We'll need to examine the wreckage more carefully, Lopez said. Initial observations suggest the fire started in multiple locations simultaneously. That's unusual for an accidental fire. Marcus felt a spark of hope. If the fire was deliberately set, maybe there would be justice for Dr. Kethvar. The investigation continued for 3 days. Marcus stayed in a hotel downtown while forensic experts combed through every piece of debris from his house. On the 4th day, Detective Lopez called with preliminary results. We found traces of thermite in 3 different locations, she told Marcus. This was definitely arson. Someone planted incendiary devices in your garage and living room. Any idea who did it? We're still gathering evidence, but we did find something interesting. Security cameras from 2 houses down the street captured footage of someone in dark clothing entering your backyard around 8 p.m. on Tuesday night. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. Someone had murdered Dr. Kethvar and destroyed years of research that could have helped millions of people. Someone in this neighborhood had decided that their prejudices were more important than human and alien lives. What happens next? Marcus asked. We continue investigating until we find whoever did this, Lopez said firmly. Arson is a serious crime. Arson that results in death is murder. We will catch the person responsible. The Federation Science Council contacted Marcus the next day. They had heard about the fire and Dr. Kethvar's death. They offered unlimited resources to help Marcus rebuild his research and continue the terraforming project. Dr. Kethvar was one of our most valued scientists, said Council Director Amanda Ross during a video call. His work has helped establish peaceful relations between 12 different species. We want to honor his memory by ensuring that your research succeeds. Marcus accepted their offer but insisted on one condition. The new laboratory would be built on the ruins of his old house. He would not let whoever had killed his friend drive him away from Aurora Heights. We'll also assign a security team to protect you and your work, Director Ross said. And we're putting together a legal team to support the colonial authorities in prosecuting whoever committed this crime. Linda Patterson watched from her window as construction crews began clearing the wreckage from Marcus's property. She had expected him to leave Aurora Heights after the fire. Instead, he seemed determined to stay and rebuild. Rick had disappeared 2 days after the fire. He left a note saying he was taking a job on another planet and would not be returning to New Geneva. Linda suspected he was running away because the investigation was getting too close to the truth. Detective Lopez had already interviewed Linda twice about the fire. The questions were getting more specific and more uncomfortable. Lopez clearly suspected that someone in the neighborhood was responsible for the arson. Linda tried to act normal, but she felt guilty and scared every day. She had never intended for anyone to die. The plan was supposed to destroy Marcus's laboratory, not kill an innocent alien scientist. Now Dr. Kethvar was dead, and Marcus was more determined than ever to continue his research. The Federation was backing him with unlimited money and resources. Instead of driving him away, the fire had made him stronger and more dangerous to Linda's vision of a pure human community. Worse, other residents were starting to turn against Linda. Bill Cooper had organized a memorial service for Dr. Kethvar that most of the neighborhood attended. People were beginning to realize that a respected scientist had been murdered simply for working with a human colleague. Linda knew it was only a matter of time before the investigation led back to her and Rick. She needed to find a way to deflect suspicion, or she would spend the rest of her life in prison for murder. Detective Carmen Lopez had investigated dozens of arson cases during her 15 years with the Colonial Police. She knew the difference between accidents and deliberate fires. The Marcus Johnson case was definitely deliberate and definitely personal. The thermite residue told part of the story. Someone had used military-grade incendiary devices to start fires in 3 different locations inside the house. The placement was too precise for random vandalism. This was planned destruction carried out by someone with demolitions training. Lopez studied the security footage from the neighboring houses frame by frame. The figure caught on camera was wearing all black clothing and moved with practiced stealth. Height and build suggested a human male, probably between 25 and 35 years old. The person knew exactly where to go and spent only 12 minutes on the property. Professional job, Lopez told her partner, Detective Ray Santos. Whoever did this has military or police training in explosives handling. Santos nodded as he reviewed the case files. The victim list makes it personal too. Dr. Kethvar was well known in the alien community. Killing him sends a message about humans who work with non-human species. Lopez had already interviewed most of the Aurora Heights residents. Their reactions fell into 3 categories. Some people seemed genuinely shocked and saddened by the fire. Others appeared nervous and evasive when asked about Marcus Johnson. A few residents, led by Linda Patterson, kept emphasizing how dangerous they thought Marcus's research activities were. Linda Patterson is hiding something, Lopez told Santos. Every time I ask her about the night of the fire, she changes small details in her story. First, she said she was watching television alone. Then she mentioned her nephew was visiting. Now she claims they were both asleep by 11 p.m. What do we know about the nephew? Lopez pulled up Rick Patterson's file on her computer. Richard Patterson, age 28, former Federation Marine, demolition specialist. Discharged 3 years ago for excessive force during a peacekeeping mission on Rigel 4. Currently unemployed and living with his aunt. Santos whistled softly. Demolition specialist who lives with the neighborhood HOA president. That's not a coincidence. Gets better, Lopez said. I checked his employment records. Rick Patterson bought thermite compounds from a mining supply company 2 weeks before the fire. Claimed he needed them for a construction job. Any legitimate construction work that would require thermite? I called every construction company on New Geneva. None of them hired Rick Patterson for anything in the past 6 months. The thermite purchase was for personal use. Lopez and Santos drove to Linda Patterson's house that afternoon with a search warrant. Linda answered the door wearing a bathrobe, even though it was 3 p.m. She looked tired and nervous. Detectives, what can I do for you today? We have a warrant to search your property, Lopez said, showing Linda the legal documents. We're looking for evidence related to the arson at Marcus Johnson's house. Linda's face went pale. I don't understand. Why would you want to search my house? Where is your nephew Rick? Santos asked. He's not here. He left town a few days ago for a job opportunity on another planet. When exactly did he leave? Lopez asked. Linda hesitated. Thursday morning, I think, or maybe Wednesday night. I'm not sure of the exact time. Lopez and Santos spent 4 hours searching the house. In Rick's basement bedroom, they found residue traces of thermite on his clothing and a detailed map of Aurora Heights with Marcus's house circled in red ink. Hidden under his mattress was a timing device identical to the ones used in the arson. This is evidence of premeditated arson and murder, Lopez told Linda. Where is Rick Patterson now? Linda sat down heavily in her kitchen chair. I don't know. He just said he was leaving and would contact me later. Did you know about his plan to burn down Marcus Johnson's house? I don't know what you're talking about, Linda said, but her voice was shaking. Santos showed her the evidence they had found. Your nephew used military-grade thermite to start a fire that killed Dr. Kethvar. You're going to need to tell us everything. You know about his activities. Linda stared at the timing device for a long moment. Lopez could see her internal struggle between loyalty to Rick and fear of going to prison. I want to call a lawyer, Linda finally said. That's your right, Lopez replied. But Rick is already gone and you're still here. If you helped plan this arson, you're facing murder charges. If you cooperate with our investigation, the prosecutor might be willing to reduce the charges. The next day, Lopez received a message from Spaceport Security. Rick Patterson had booked passage on a freight ship to the Outer Rim territories 3 days after the fire. The ship had already left New Geneva's solar system and would not return for 6 months. He's running, Santos said. Guilty people always run. Lopez put out a Federation-wide warrant for Rick's arrest. With luck, colonial authorities would catch him when his ship reached its destination. But the Outer Rim was a lawless area where criminals could disappear easily. Meanwhile, Marcus Johnson was dealing with his own investigation. The Federation Science Council had sent a team of experts to examine what remained of his research data. Most of his laboratory equipment was destroyed, but his computer systems had quantum-encrypted backup drives that survived the fire. Dr. Sarah Kim, the Federation's top terraforming specialist, worked with Marcus to recover his research files. She was a small woman with short black hair and intense brown eyes behind thick glasses.
"Your soil bacteria modifications are brilliant," she told Marcus as they reviewed the recovered data. "This could revolutionize how we establish colonies on dead planets." Dr. Kethvar contributed most of the biological insights, Marcus said.
Sadly. I was just the engineer who figured out how to implement his ideas. Then we need to continue his work, Dr. Kim said firmly. The Federation Council has approved unlimited funding for your project. We're also assigning you a full research team including Dr. Kethvar's daughter. Marcus looked up in surprise. Dr. Kethvar had a daughter? Dr. Yethka is one of our best xenobiologists. She specializes in cross-species ecosystem development. She specifically requested to work on this project to honor her father's memory. Dr. Yethka arrived on New Geneva the following week. She was younger than her father but had the same large black eyes and calm manner. Unlike most Zentari, she spoke with barely any accent. "My father wrote to me about your research," she told Marcus during their first meeting. "He was very excited about the potential applications. He believed your technology could help establish peaceful colonies where humans and aliens could live together." "I'm sorry about what happened to him," Marcus said. "If I had known there were people in this neighborhood who would resort to violence." "You are not responsible for the actions of small-minded individuals," Yethka said. "My father chose to work with you because he believed in the importance of your research. We will continue that work." Construction began on Marcus's new laboratory within 2 weeks. The Federation provided a much larger budget than he had before. The new facility would be 3 times the size of his old garage laboratory and equipped with the most advanced research equipment available. Linda Patterson watched the construction from her window with growing despair. Instead of driving Marcus away, the fire had brought him more support and resources than ever. Federation scientists, alien diplomats, and colonial officials visited the construction site daily. Aurora Heights was becoming the center of interspecies cooperation on New Geneva. Worse, Detective Lopez continued investigating the arson case. She had found enough evidence to charge Rick with murder and arson. Linda knew it was only a matter of time before the investigation reached her as well. One morning, Linda found a message on her door from the Zentari Community Council. Dr. Kethvar had been a respected elder among the local aliens. His death had caused outrage throughout the non-human population of New Geneva. The message was simple but chilling. "We know who killed our friend. Justice will be served." Linda realized that even if she escaped human prosecution, she would never be safe from alien justice. The Zentari had their own ways of dealing with murderers. Detective Lopez called Linda that afternoon. "We found Rick Patterson on Tau Ceti 3. Local authorities arrested him this morning. He's being extradited back to New Geneva to face charges." Linda felt her last hope disappear. Rick would certainly confess everything to reduce his own sentence. She needed to make her own deal with the prosecutor before that happened. "Detective Lopez," Linda said quietly, "I think it's time we talked." The New Geneva Colonial Supreme Court had never hosted a trial quite like this one. The case involved arson, murder, and accusations of species-based hate crimes. Representatives from 12 different alien governments had requested permission to observe the proceedings. The Federation Council had assigned their top legal advocates to assist the prosecution. Linda Patterson sat at the defendant's table wearing an orange prison jumpsuit. Her expensive lawyers from Earth had arrived 3 days earlier and immediately filed motions to dismiss all charges. They argued that the colonial court lacked jurisdiction over crimes involving Federation citizens. Rick Patterson had been extradited from Tau Ceti 3 and was being held in a separate facility. His lawyer had already negotiated a plea agreement in exchange for testifying against Linda. Rick would serve 50 years in prison instead of life without parole. Marcus Johnson sat in the front row of the courtroom gallery with Dr. Yethka beside him. The new laboratory was nearly complete and their research was progressing faster than ever. But Marcus wanted to see justice served for Dr. Kethvar's murder. Judge Patricia Wong called the court to order at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. She was a stern woman with gray hair who had presided over colonial courts for 20 years. This was her first case involving interspecies violence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Judge Wong announced, "this trial will determine whether Linda Patterson is guilty of conspiracy to commit arson and conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Dr. Kethvar. The defendant has pleaded not guilty to all charges." Prosecutor E. David Chen stood to present the opening statement for the colonial government. He was a young man with dark hair and serious expression who had prepared extensively for this case. "Members of the jury," Chen began, "the evidence will show that Linda Patterson planned and directed the arson attack that killed Dr. Kethvar. She was motivated by hatred for aliens and resentment toward humans who work with non-human species. Her actions represent not just murder, but an attack on the fundamental values of our diverse society." Linda's lead attorney was Jonathan Blake, a silver-haired man from Earth who specialized in defending high-profile cases. He had flown to New Geneva specifically to represent Linda. "My client is innocent of these charges," Blake told the jury. "Linda Patterson is a respected community leader who worked hard to maintain safety standards in her neighborhood. The prosecution wants you to believe that she masterminded a complex arson plot, but they have no direct evidence of her involvement. My client's nephew acted alone without her knowledge or consent." The first week of testimony focused on the technical evidence from the fire investigation. Detective Lopez explained how investigators had determined that thermite devices were used to start the blaze. Fire department experts described the intensity of the flames and the speed with which the house was consumed. Dr. Rachel Torres, the colonial medical examiner, testified about Dr. Kethvar's death. "The victim died from smoke inhalation before the ear. Flames reached him. Death would have occurred within minutes of the fire starting. There is no evidence that Dr. Kethvar suffered or was aware of what was happening." Marcus felt some small comfort knowing that his friend had not suffered during his final moments. The prosecution then called several Aurora Heights residents to testify about the tensions in the neighborhood before the fire. Bill Cooper described the association meeting where residents voted to ban alien visitors. Linda Patterson led the campaign against Marcus Johnson, Bill testified. She claimed his research was dangerous and that aliens shouldn't be allowed in our community. She seemed obsessed with the idea that Marcus was violating community standards. Helen Walsh, who had supported Linda's campaign, now tried to distance herself from the conspiracy. "I never thought anyone would actually hurt Dr. Kethvar. We just wanted Marcus to move his laboratory somewhere else." The most damaging testimony came from Gary Martinez, who had been present during several private conversations with Linda about Marcus's activities. Linda said that legal complaints weren't working. Gary testified reluctantly. She talked about needing to take stronger action to protect the community. She asked me if I knew anyone with military training who could help solve the problem. Defense attorney Blake attacked each witness during cross-examination, suggesting that their memories were unreliable and their motivations were suspect. "Isn't it true that you disliked my client's leadership style?" Blake asked Bill Cooper. "And that you're testifying against her now to deflect attention from your own possible involvement?" "That's not true," Bill replied firmly. "I'm testifying because Linda Patterson caused the death of a good man who never hurt anyone." The second week featured testimony from Rick Patterson himself. The former Marine looked smaller and older than his 28 years as he took the witness stand. Prison had not been kind to him. Prosecutor Chen walked Rick through the events leading up to the arson. "Who first suggested that Marcus Johnson's laboratory should be destroyed?" "My Aunt Linda," Rick answered quietly. "She said the legal system wasn't working and that we needed to take direct action." "Did she ask you specifically to burn down the house?" "Not directly. She said we needed to make it look like an accident so Marcus would leave the neighborhood. She knew I had demolitions training from the Marines." "What did you use to start the fire?" "Thermite charges placed in 3 locations. Linda gave me a key to her car and detailed maps of Marcus's property. She also provided alibis for both of us on the night of the attack." Blake's cross-examination focused on Rick's military discharge and his history of violence. You were kicked out of the Marines for excessive force, correct? Blake asked. Yes, sir. And you've been unemployed for 3 years because no one wants to hire someone with your record? Yes, sir. So when the prosecution offered you a reduced sentence in exchange for testifying against my client, you jumped at the chance to save yourself, didn't you? I'm testifying because it's the truth, Rick said. Linda planned the whole thing, I just carried out her orders. The third week brought expert testimony about the broader implications of the case. Dr. Sarah Kim explained the importance of Marcus's terraforming research and how Dr. Kethvar's death had set back scientific progress. Dr. Kethvar was irreplaceable, Dr. Kim testified. His knowledge of cross-species biology took 60 years to develop. His death represents not just a personal tragedy, but a loss for all sentient beings who need new worlds to live on. Ambassador Thekaron from the Zentari homeworld testified via hologram about the impact of Dr. Kethvar's murder on interspecies relations. Dr. Kethvar dedicated his life to building bridges between humans and aliens, the ambassador said. His murder by human extremists has damaged trust that took decades to establish. The Zentari people demand justice for this crime. Blake objected repeatedly to testimony about interspecies relations, arguing that it was irrelevant to the specific charges against his client. This trial is about arson and murder, Blake told Judge Wong. The prosecution is trying to turn it into a political statement about alien rights. My client is not responsible for interstellar diplomacy. But Judge Wong allowed most of the testimony, ruling that the broader context was relevant to understanding the defendant's motivations and the severity of their actions. The most dramatic moment came when Marcus Johnson took the witness stand. He described his friendship with Dr. Kethvar and the importance of their research to refugee resettlement efforts. Dr. Kethvar was a brilliant scientist and a kind person, Marcus testified. He came to my house because he wanted to help homeless families find new places to live. He died because some people couldn't accept cooperation between humans and aliens. Blake's cross-examination tried to portray Marcus as a reckless researcher who had endangered his neighborhood. You were conducting potentially dangerous experiments in a residential area, weren't you? Blake asked. My research was completely safe and properly authorized, Marcus replied. The only danger came from people who were willing to commit murder to stop scientific progress. But you admit that your activities caused controversy in the community. My activities caused controversy among a small group of prejudiced individuals, Marcus said firmly. Most of my neighbors supported what I was doing. As the prosecution finished presenting their case, the evidence against Linda Patterson seemed overwhelming. But Blake still had one more strategy to try. He planned to argue that Linda was not responsible for her nephew's violent actions, regardless of any conversations they might have had about Marcus Johnson's research. Defense attorney Jonathan Blake stood before the jury with confidence that surprised everyone in the courtroom. Despite 3 weeks of damaging testimony against his client, he seemed to believe he could still win the case. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Blake began. The prosecution wants you to convict Linda Patterson of murder based on the word of a violent ex-soldier who admits to burning down an occupied house. Rick Patterson is a killer who would say anything to reduce his own sentence. My client may have complained about her neighbor's activities, but complaining is not a crime. Blake spent 2 hours arguing that Linda's criticism of Marcus Johnson's research represented legitimate community concerns rather than criminal conspiracy. He pointed out that the Homeowners Association had voted democratically to ban alien visitors, proving that Linda's views were shared by many residents. Dr. Kethvar's death was a tragedy, Blake continued, but it was caused by Rick Patterson's independent decision to commit arson. Linda Patterson never asked anyone to burn down Marcus Johnson's house. She never provided explosives or timing devices. She is guilty of nothing more than expressing unpopular opinions about neighborhood safety. Prosecutor David Chen had been waiting for this moment. During his rebuttal, he presented evidence that Blake had not expected. The defense claims that Linda Patterson knew nothing about her nephew's plan, Chen said. But we have recovered additional evidence that tells a different story. Chen played a recording from Linda's home security system that had been overlooked during the initial investigation. The audio captured a conversation between Linda and Rick 2 days before the fire. Linda's voice was clearly audible. "The legal system won't help us, so we need to take care of this problem ourselves. You know how to make buildings catch fire, don't you?" Rick's response was equally clear. "I can make it look like an equipment malfunction. No one will ever know we were involved." The recording continued for several minutes as Linda and Rick discussed specific details of their plan. Linda provided information about Marcus's schedule and suggested the best time to plant the incendiary devices. Blake objected furiously, claiming the recording had been illegally obtained and should not be admissible in court. But Judge Wong ruled that the evidence was valid because it came from Linda's own security system. Chen also presented financial records showing that Linda had withdrawn 5,000 credits from her bank account the day before the fire. Rick had used those credits to purchase additional thermite compounds and timing equipment. This was not a spur-of-the-moment decision, Chen told the jury. This was a carefully planned murder carried out by two people who believed their prejudices justified killing an innocent scientist. But Chen had saved his most powerful evidence for last. He called Dr. Yethka to the witness stand to explain the true scope of what had been lost when her father was murdered. Dr. Yethka testified in perfect English with only a slight accent. Her large black eyes showed sadness but also determination to see justice served. "My father spent 60 years learning how to help different species live together peacefully," she said. "His work with Marcus Johnson could have provided homes for millions of refugees from the war zones. His death has delayed that research by at least 5 years. Chen showed the jury holographic projections of dead planets that could have been terraformed using Marcus and Dr. Kethvar's technology. Vast, empty worlds stretched across the screens, waiting to be transformed into gardens that could support billions of beings. Dr. Kethvar was not just a scientist, Dr. Yethka continued. He was a bridge between species who often misunderstand each other. His murder sends a message that cooperation between humans and aliens is dangerous. That message threatens the peace we have worked so hard to build." Blake's cross-examination of Dr. Yethka backfired badly. He tried to suggest that alien testimony should not carry the same weight as human evidence in a colonial court. "With respect, Dr. Yethka, your father chose to involve himself in human community affairs. Shouldn't he have expected some controversy?" Dr. Yethka's response was calm but devastating. "My father expected scientific disagreement, Mr. Blake. He did not expect to be murdered for trying to help homeless families find new worlds to live on." Judge Wong had to call for order as murmurs of outrage swept through the courtroom gallery. Chen's closing argument lasted 3 hours and covered not just the specific crimes against Dr. Kethvar, but the broader implications for human civilization. "This case is about more than arson and murder," Chen told the jury. "It's about what kind of society we want to build among the stars. Do we want to be a species that kills scientists for working with aliens? Do we want to be known throughout the galaxy as people who choose hatred over hope?" Chen described the refugees from the Outer Rim Wars who were still waiting for new homes on livable planets. He explained how Marcus's terraforming technology could transform empty worlds into gardens within years instead of centuries. "Linda Patterson didn't just kill Dr. Kethvar," Chen concluded. "She tried to kill the future. She tried to stop humanity from becoming the best version of ourselves. Your verdict will tell the galaxy whether she succeeded." Blake's closing argument felt weak by comparison. He continued to insist that Linda had never intended for anyone to die, and that Rick had acted independently. But the recording of their planning session had destroyed any credibility those claims might have had. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours before reaching their verdict. When they returned to the courtroom, the forewoman stood to announce their decision. "We find the defendant Linda Patterson guilty of conspiracy to commit arson in the first degree. We find the defendant Linda Patterson guilty of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree. We find the defendant Linda Patterson guilty of hate crimes against a sentient being based on species origin." Linda showed no emotion as the verdicts were read. She had known for weeks that conviction was inevitable, once the prosecution found the recording of her conversation with Rick. Judge Wong scheduled sentencing for the following week. Under colonial law, Linda faced life imprisonment without possibility of parole. The hate crime enhancement meant she would serve her sentence on a maximum security prison planet, rather than in a standard colonial facility. Marcus felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness as he left the courtroom. Justice had been served for Dr. Kethvar's murder, but nothing could bring back his friend and research partner. Dr. Yethka walked beside him as they made their way through the crowd of reporters and observers outside the courthouse. "My father would be pleased that his death led to justice," she said, "but he would be more pleased that our research will continue." "Have you decided whether to accept the Federation's offer?" Marcus asked. Dr. Yethka nodded. "I will take over my father's position as head of xenobiology research. Together we will complete the work he started." A week later, Judge Wong sentenced Linda Patterson to life imprisonment without parole on the prison planet Alcatraz 7. In her final statement to the court, Linda showed no remorse for her actions. "I was trying to protect my community from dangerous influences," she said. "I regret that someone died, but I do not regret defending human values against alien contamination." Those words would follow Linda to prison and ensure that she was never considered for clemency or sentence reduction. Marcus and Dr. Yethka watched the sentencing from the gallery before returning to their laboratory. The new facility was now fully operational and equipped with the most advanced terraforming equipment in the galaxy. The Federation Science Council had also assigned them a team of researchers from 6 different species. Humans, Zentari, Rigelians, vegans, and others worked side by side to develop technology that could transform dead worlds into living ones. "Dr. Kethvar's dream is becoming reality," Dr. Yethka told Marcus as they reviewed their latest test results. "Species that once fought each other are now working together to create new homes for everyone." Marcus smiled as he looked around the laboratory filled with beings from across the galaxy. This was what Dr. Kethvar had died for. This was why Linda Patterson's hatred had ultimately failed. Humanity's future lay not in isolation or species purity, but in cooperation with the vast community of intelligent life that filled the galaxy. The trial had proven that justice would protect those who chose cooperation over conflict. Now it was time to build that future among the stars. 6 months after Linda Patterson was sentenced to life in prison, Marcus Johnson stood before the Federation Council on Earth to present the results of his terraforming research. The Great Assembly Hall contained representatives from 47 different species, all gathered to hear about humanity's contribution to galactic civilization. The presentation took place in the rebuilt laboratory that now occupied the site where Dr. Kethvar had died. The facility had been named the Kethvar Institute for Interspecies Cooperation and had become the most important terraforming research center in Federation space. "Honored delegates," Marcus began. 18 months ago, my friend and colleague Dr. Kethvar was murdered for the crime of working with a human scientist. Today, I am proud to report that his sacrifice has led to the greatest breakthrough in terraforming technology in galactic history. The holographic display behind Marcus showed before and after images of Kepler 442b, a dead planet in the Kepler system that had become the first world successfully terraformed using the new technology. What had once been a barren rock, covered in toxic atmosphere, was now a green and blue world with breathable air and fertile soil. The process took only 18 months from start to finish, Marcus continued. Traditional terraforming would have required 300 years to achieve the same results. We estimate that this technology can provide habitable worlds for over 2 billion refugees currently displaced by the Outer Rim conflicts. Dr. Yethka stood beside Marcus as his co-presenter. She had taken over leadership of the xenobiology research team and had made crucial improvements to her father's original biological designs. The key breakthrough came from combining Zentari bacterial engineering with human fusion technology, Dr. Yethka explained. My father's soil organisms create the foundation for plant life, while Marcus's atmospheric processors establish the correct gas mixtures for different species' breathing requirements. The Federation delegates asked detailed questions about implementation costs, environmental safety, and colonization timelines. Marcus and Dr. Yethka had answers for everything. Their research team had spent 6 months testing every aspect of the terraforming process. Ambassador Chen Wei from Earth raised the question that everyone was thinking. This technology represents unprecedented power over planetary environments. How do we ensure it will be used responsibly? Marcus had expected this concern. The Kethvar Institute operates under strict Federation oversight with representatives from 12 different species on our governing board. No terraforming project can begin without unanimous approval from all member worlds. We have also built safeguards into the technology that prevent its use as a weapon. The vote to approve large-scale implementation of the terraforming technology was unanimous. The Federation committed to funding 50 new terraforming projects over the next decade, with priority given to worlds that could house refugees from the ongoing conflicts. After the presentation, Marcus and Dr. Yethka returned to New Geneva to continue their research. The Kethvar Institute had grown from a simple laboratory into a sprawling complex that employed over 300 scientists, engineers, and support staff from dozens of different species. The success had transformed Aurora Heights from an exclusive, human enclave into the most diverse neighborhood on New Geneva. Centauri families lived next to human scientists. Rigelian engineers shared gardens with vegan botanists. The old Homeowners Association rules about maintaining community standards had been replaced with guidelines promoting interspecies cooperation and cultural exchange. Bill Cooper, who had become the neighborhood's new community leader, often remarked that Aurora Heights was now the kind of place the Federation's founders had dreamed about when they first established peaceful relations between species. Marcus's house had been rebuilt as a guest facility for visiting researchers. Dr. Kethvar's daughter lived there permanently, along with a rotating group of scientists from across the galaxy. The building had become a symbol of how cooperation could triumph over hatred. Linda Patterson's former house stood empty. No one wanted to live in the home of a convicted murderer. The Federation had seized the property to pay for victim compensation and would eventually convert it into a memorial garden dedicated to promoting understanding between species. Rick Patterson was serving his 50-year sentence on a medium-security prison planet. Unlike his aunt, he had expressed genuine remorse for his actions and was working with prison counselors to understand how his prejudices had led him to commit murder. He would be eligible for parole in 25 years if he continued making progress in rehabilitation programs. Marcus received regular updates on both Linda and Rick through the colonial justice system. Linda remained unrepentant and had been placed in solitary confinement after attacking an alien guard. Her appeals had all been rejected, and she would spend the rest of her life in prison. The real measure of victory, however, was not in the punishment of those who had chosen hatred, but in the success of those who chose cooperation. The first colony ships were already heading toward newly terraformed worlds where humans and aliens would build communities together. Marcus often worked late in his laboratory, looking up at the stars through the transparent ceiling that Dr. Yethka had designed. Each point of light represented potential homes for families who had lost everything in the wars. Some of those stars would soon have green worlds orbiting them, worlds that could support billions of beings from dozens of different species. Dr. Yethka joined him one evening as he reviewed plans for their next terraforming project. She carried 2 cups of the spiced tea that her father had taught her to make. "My father would be proud of what we have accomplished," she said, handing Marcus his tea. "He would be more proud of what we're going to accomplish," Marcus replied. "The refugee ships from Proxima Centauri will reach our first terraformed world next month. 50,000 families will have new homes because of your father's work." Dr. Yethka's large black eyes reflected the starlight streaming through the ceiling. "And because of your determination to continue that work despite everything that happened." Marcus thought about the path that had brought him to this moment. The war, the prejudice, the fire, the trial, and finally the breakthrough that would help millions of beings find new homes among the stars. "Your father once told me that the best way to defeat hatred is to prove that cooperation works better," Marcus said. "I think we've done that." 3 months later, Marcus stood on the surface of New Hope, the first world terraformed using their technology. The planet had been a dead rock 18 months earlier. Now it had blue skies, green forests, and crystal-clear lakes fed by mountain streams. The first colonists were already building their settlements. Human families worked alongside Centauri engineers and Rigelian farmers to construct homes and community centers. Children from 6 different species played together in newly planted parks, while their parents planned the future of their shared world. Marcus had been invited to speak at the dedication ceremony for the planet's first city. As he looked out, at the crowd of beings who would soon call this world home, he thought about Dr. Kethvar and the price that had been paid for this moment. This world exists because a brilliant scientist believed that different species could work together to solve problems that none of us could handle alone, Marcus told the gathered colonists. Dr. Kethvar died for that belief. Today, his dream becomes reality. The crowd included humans, Centauri, Rigelians, vegans, and representatives from a dozen other species. They applauded not just Marcus's words, but the future they were building. Together, we name this city Kethvar in honor of the scientist whose work made our new home possible, Marcus continued. And we promise that the values he died defending will guide us as we build a civilization worthy of the stars. As the sun set over New Hope's first city, Marcus received a message from Dr. Yethka back on New Geneva. The Federation Council had approved funding for their most ambitious project yet, terraforming an entire solar system that could house over 1 billion refugees from the war zones. Marcus smiled as he read the message. The work was far from finished. There were still billions of beings who needed new homes, still prejudices to overcome, still bridges to build between species that had never learned to trust each other. But humanity had proven something important. During the trial of Linda Patterson and the success of the terraforming project, they had shown that their species' greatest strength was not superior technology or military might, but the ability to learn from their mistakes and choose cooperation over conflict. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges that would require the combined efforts of all intelligent species to solve. Humanity had earned its place in that community, not by being better than others, but by being willing to work with others to become better than they had been before. As Marcus boarded the transport ship that would take him back to New Geneva, he looked up at the stars one more time. Each point of light represented possibility and hope. Some would become new homes for beings who had lost everything. Others would become meeting places where different species could learn from each other. Dr. Kethvar's murder had been intended to stop that future from arriving. Instead, it had helped humanity discover who they really wanted to be among the stars.